Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County. I'm with my best bud, Rodney Wilds, First Bank lender, also in Williamson County. And we're here just to talk about taking the temperature of the market and everything going on in the world of real estate. What do you know, Rodney?
Same thing as last week. Not a whole lot. Just absorbing all these market changes. It's pretty crazy right now.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know about, I know you're a fan of the tariffs, and so am I. I'll tell you something that happened that when I saw this happen, I thought this is why we're doing this. And it was when, and I don't mean to get political, but I'm gonna, because this is our show, right? We're allowed to do that. When China cut off the magnets and stuff like that, I was like, well, there you go. I mean, there's the reason you got to bring stuff, reshore some of this stuff, and I mean, how many years down the road could they have just called and said, hey, we're shutting that off and you're out of luck? Anyway, I have no idea how I got started on that. Sorry.
It's our lead in today.
That's we're doing the right thing, whether it feels good or not. So the things I want to talk about today, I've got three different articles that I want to touch base with. One, and this is conjecture, it really is, and in terms of the smart person in the room, that's going to be Rodney, not me. But the first topic is going to be, I just want to touch on it, is will a recession lower home prices? There's so much conversation about that, whether that's going to happen. I mean, inflation seems to be in the rearview mirror, I think. Wouldn't you say, safe to say on that?
For today, yes. I mean, you never know what it holds, but yes, I agree with that.
Okay. But people talk about recession and what they're hoping for. And I've got a video queuing up to get ready to publish on that. And it's people are kind of praying for a recession. They're looking for that to happen, thinking it's going to be the answer to their financial prayers when it comes to buying a house. And so I got a Newsweek article, and I don't know if you have do you have an opinion on Newsweek or anything?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't care about any. I can read an article and judge for myself.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes some people are, anyway. The bottom line is, in the article, it talks about a recession this year could lead to a much needed drop in home prices across the country, experts told Newsweek. Experts, I don't know what that means. But people that are in the know and reading charts and stuff like that. It talks a lot about the ongoing housing affordability crisis in the U.S., which is clear. I mean, and I don't know that there's any going back, bless you, with that kind of a thing. It says the affordability crisis is largely a result of the chronic lack of supply. Let me show you a quick screen on that. There we go. Lack of supply inventory. I mean, that's what inventory is looking like now. And if you go back 3 years, it's just, with a longer term view, it's really a problem. Skyrocketing home prices and historically high mortgage rates. And again, they're pushing 7%. That's your bailiwick, certainly not mine. But it has been jumping over 7 recently. Isn't that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, especially with the $3 trillion trade, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Jesus. And so it brings up Trump, which I get. It kind of, I think, points out their position on things, which is fine. Angie, good morning. It's good afternoon. Good morning to you. So Trump ran with the promise of lowering housing costs. That he's been in there 90 days. Not going to happen overnight. Especially new tariffs could strain the U.S. economy and increase housing costs. There's going to be an argument to that when it comes to lumber and parts and pieces and steel and all that. There's going to be arguments to that with tariff costs and extra money. The chances of the U.S. economy entering a recession by the end of the year have increased, so they say. Some people say from 35%, whatever. They're taking bets on it. It's like a Las Vegas kind of a thing. Trump maintains his tariffs will lead the U.S. to an economic boom. I happen to subscribe to that. I agree with the guy. Is it scary and uncomfortable? Yes. But let's move on to those are the reasons they're saying there's going to be a problem. And it could bring about recession. Would recession bring down the mortgage rates? And here's what it says. Mortgage rates typically fall during a recession as investors lean on bonds for reliable returns versus bigger, riskier investments. Hannah Jones told Newsweek, that's a Realtor.com senior economist. More demand for bonds lowers their return. The mortgage rates mirror the 10-year Treasury yield, so mortgage interest rates would move lower in tandem. And if you looked at the charts, how those things mirror one another, even though they're not directly connected, you would think that they are.
Right. Yes.
I mean, it's just lockstep, it seems to be. Probably not the best term, but a weakening of the U.S. economy would slow inflation, which we seem to be doing that, even accounting for the impact of tariffs and the shift of money out of stocks into bonds. Again, if bonds are being bought up, that means investors believe in the country. I mean, it's a statement about the confidence in the U.S. economy. That's really what that's about. And therefore mortgage rates will go down. Critically, it says that a recession could lead to softer home prices, but this is the whole part, in my opinion, to the article, and you chime in, Rodney, is a recession could lead to softer home prices, but that would be the result of a significant drop in buyer demand. Higher unemployment would reduce the number of households that can afford a home, further weakening buyer demand. As buyer demand falls, sellers are likely to lower prices to attract remaining home shoppers on the market. What's your take on all of that stuff?
First I'm going to say, I'm going to talk about local, right? I'm going to talk, when I answer that question, I'm answering that question for what I think will be in this area, which I think if we seen a recession, which typically brings lower mortgage rates, I do not see that hurting the housing markets. I see that as actually when rates go down, I see that it'll put more demand on our inventory, which is, not perfect by any stretch of imagination. It's better than it has been. But I think once we see rates again, I don't think a downward pressure on home prices will be the case at all. Once you get rates a little bit lower, I think it's going to be an upward pressure on housing prices. I think the demand will outweigh the inventory. But, I could see, different parts of the country could be subject to this. That's not a hot area or a growing area. We just seem to be a very good area. And I think most areas around the country would see the same thing that what I'm describing. I don't think we'd see a decline in home prices.
I actually agree with that. And then we had, of course, hi, Philip. Hi, Wendy. How are you guys? Philip, our smart guy in the audience, speaks up.
Well, from what a 10,000 mile flyby was, the biggest thing that happened is that when there was a rumor on X that came out that said Trump was pausing tariffs, the stock market gained $3 trillion. As soon as it come out, an hour later, that was his typical fake news comment. It reversed that, and they lost $3 trillion. So it was that was a huge swing just over a rumor of tariffs being paused. CNBC picked up that rumor, and as soon as CNBC said it on the news, and they even said it was a rumor, but it's like when a major news outlet, publishes it, and it's going to gain some traction whether it's a rumor or not.
Right.
They turned it from a rumor not to a rumor, which it was a rumor. You know what I'm saying? Just because they're so big, you know what I'm saying? It was it really caused some chaos in the markets.
And the stock we've been saying this for a year, and I'm not a stock guy, but I know enough about how it runs, is that the stock is based on people's emotions. not everybody, but there's enough that respond. If they respond emotionally, just like that spike that you're talking about, it starts to manifest itself. It's things turn true just based on how
Yeah.
people feel. And feelings ain't facts. I got news for you. Something I learned a little while ago.
The stock market will jump on something like if they feel like there's I mean they don't wait for it to happen like we always talk about. Whenever there's the Fed changes the interest rate, and say lowers it or the market, the day they actually do it, the market doesn't move because it's already baked in. As soon as they think it's a high probability, they're jumping ahead of it trying to gain that. So
Yeah. And I understand these comments. Remember what we're talking about. The reason that I'm mentioning this recession idea is because when I see articles like this, what happens is some of these huge companies will do these surveys on potential buyers. That's how they keep a pulse on the American home buyer, for lack of, I guess that's a great way to say it. It can be Zillow, it can be Realtor, all these guys. And for the recession idea, they're asking, what's it going to take for you to buy a home? That's what they're at. They're trying to figure that out. And people are saying that they're waiting for a recession before they do anything. A large number of people. That's what I'm
mhm.
suggesting. And that's why we're talking about this. Do I think that a recession is going to happen? I really don't know. I mean, like Rodney says, not today. Doesn't look like it today. But that's the reason we're bringing the topic up, because just like that news article that caused the stock spike, this kind of stuff can cause people to behave in ways, putting them on the fence, waiting for a recession that's never going to happen. And from a technical standpoint, you'd need somebody like some sort of financial genius to get up and explain that away. But most people don't listen to those guys. They watch the news, and that's where they get their. That's where they.
Yeah.
That's where they make their decisions. I think is just occurred to me. Um, and on this, I can't disagree with your thinking on that. Now, their response to that has been a little bit different, and I just want to address the elephant in the room. I, you know, the bonds were looking kind of crummy, and people are changing their minds. So now we're flexible. Maybe that's. I'm not here to defend or anything like that, but I'm stating you got a case for the blinking idea. Anyway, if somebody here's something that I know about. Well, we'll get to that. So Daniel Hale, chief economist for Realty, will get off of this. The U.S. economy. If the U.S. economy were to tip into recession now, home sales are barely above long-term lows and may not have much further to fall, which I thought really was an interesting comment, meaning she's thinking that we're at the bottom. But economic stress among homeowners could prompt faster inventory growth that could lead to softening prices, competition, right? A phenomenon that we haven't seen in a while. Lawrence Yun, thinks that lingering house shortage and historically low delinquencies on mortgages will keep home prices where they are, even if the country enters a recession. What they're both saying is the real estate market seems pretty stable. It's not at risk of blowing up, using Phillips' term. It's just not at this particular juncture. If some buy real estate as a stable investment over stocks and bonds, then there could be added pressure for home prices to rise above normal. And the impact on home building, I have a stat on home building. I'll show you something. But this is it's a little bit early for this. Takes a second because my computer is carrying a lot of load. That new home sales month over month, they're up, but that's not what I wanted. Here we go. Sorry. They're going to be slow. I mean, these guys, they're not going to be booming, because if you are a home builder and you're going to, and wood is your main commodity when you're building a house, which I'm pretty sure that it is for the most part, and then a tariff hits you next month and you're in the middle of something, you're going to go back to your client and say, sorry, It's an extra $20,000. So if I was a home builder, I'd be holding back too, wouldn't you, Rodney?
I don't know. I don't know how much of our lumber come. I know
Canada,
used
I
to
guess.
Canada, but we still had. I think it was still out of the Oregon area. Still had a ton of lumber coming out of that area.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think I wasn't. I'm not concerned. I think that everybody over just a big overreaction to. It's like, okay, let's just say Adidas is an out of makes their clothing out of the in their tariff to death coming into the country, right? They're
Hmm.
made in whatever other country, and then they're tariff to death. I would just stop buying Adidas. Like, there's other clothing companies that would provide that, and it's the same with lumber. Is what I'm thinking is that you know Canada doesn't have corner the market on lumber. So I would think that the U.S. would find a ways to get lumber closer or whatever.
Well, sooner or later, I think that that would happen, and I think that that's what we're in. Right, this is just my opinion. Um, that we're just in that adjustment phase where we're trying to
Right.
figure out new pathways to get products. Because I'm telling you again, the thing that did not surprise me at all was when Big Red, well, China, cut off the rare earth magnets and that kind of stuff. That's just a bow shot saying, "Hey, we got import you stuff you need, and if you keep messing around, we're going to cut it off altogether." I can't agree more with getting untethered from that, because in how many years would it be before they could just say, well, you know what, we're shutting you off from everything.
Well, I mean, we're buying it.
I
I don't
know,
know why they
I know.
hold us hostage. We're buying it. It's like, guess what? We'll buy it somewhere else, or we'll make it. That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying is that we run over $1 trillion trade deficit. We're buying everybody's stuff. It's not that they're buying us. We're buying everybody else's. Like, yeah, forget all these other countries. We don't have to buy from them. That's what I'm saying. They can't. To me, for them to, I wish you'd put 1,000% tariff. I mean, I don't have to buy a car from Italy or a shotgun or whatever. I can. If I really want it, I'm going to pay the tariff price. If not, I'm going to buy American. And that's, to me, I just don't see a lot of issues with that.
I I agree. It's just this we're in that tough place where people are trying to figure it out, and because we're talking about real estate and how that has, does it have a chilling effect on the market? I think we've been preaching this for a couple of years, that if the economy is uncertain, that people are going to like, wait a minute, they're going to
Hmm.
get on the fence. And I understand,
Right.
I get that.
Especially if it relates to your job, right? If your
Oh man.
job is, if you're not like fired up about your job and know it's going to continue, large purchases, home purchases are, on the back burner, and they should be. You need to feel confident in your job.
You absolutely do. And I think that you made a really good point. And that is that um, there is so much pent up demand. I don't even think we could address how much pent up demand there is if rates got to where, if everything smoothed out and rates got to, I'm going to call a reasonable amount. I don't know what that'd be. Would it be 6 or 6.25 or five? Fives? My God, what? What?
Yeah.
That seems like that can't be. How can? But if we get to a place where it seems reasonable, because people have normalized 6.5, I think probably is.
Hmm.
I mean, like if it's 6.5 and a little bit below, we're good to go, I think, for the most part. But there's so much pent up demand that you show me a clear path for a large number of people, and houses are going to start to sell. And you're absolutely right, um, that prices are going to be forced to go. They're going to rise a little bit. I was thinking about that this morning. Of all the houses that I've bought over the years, and I've been around a minute, I know you can attest to this, certainly Angie and Phil and Wendy, that there isn't one transaction with a house where I didn't end up doing very well in the end when I sold the thing. not
Right.
once, and
Yes.
including the one I'm sitting in, although it's unrealized profit because you don't, profit or lose until you sell, but we're doing good.
Yes.
There just hasn't been, it's never failed, and for people that have, I think this is what got my interest in the article, for people that have doubts about buying a house, and you see the articles that said, is this a great time to buy? This is the best time to buy a house. Shut up. Is it? It might be. You just have to look at your own
Right.
finances to see that, It's the same as it's always been. If you buy now, it's probably going to be worth more down the road.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
That you can count on. It just the starting numbers are a little bit different. Okay. I'm going to actually clear off a topic in time. You got anything to add on that one?
No, I'm good. I don't want to run us late.
Okay. Well, I don't know what late is. All right. So I'm bringing this one up, and I'm going to ask you as my partner in this. But when you talk about the emotions behind the economy, we're going to back up just 2 seconds. I agree, and I think that what's going to happen, what has always happened with that, in any buying, in any environment where there's buying, like with technology, there's a thing called early adopters. I'm an early adopter. You show me a new Apple product, and 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go buy it and not have a complete knowledge of how it works. I'm an early adopter. In terms of your question, Phil, here's what I think. If the things open up and what we're talking about with rates, inventory, sellers beginning to believe that they can sell and move to someplace else, you start to have the news articles saying housing is up, prices, inventory is moving. We've had a huge number of home buyers in the month of April, whatever it might be. Here we go. Then people are going to start paying attention, and the ball gets rolling. It always
Right.
takes those early adopters to get started. That's what I think. What do you think, Rodney?
I think job confidence is the biggest thing in there. Job confidence and mortgage sales are always run neck and neck. You've gotta have confidence in a job or getting a job. Um, it can't be a bad job market.
Well, and you have to be confident that it's going to be there, like you've said, it's going to be there next month. You just have to. And you know what? It's going to take a minute I'll just say it. It's going to take a minute for the new administration to settle in and people to get accustomed to what's going on. Because if nothing else, what's going on is it's a shakeup. It is. And
Oh yeah.
he's designed to have it that way. He wants everybody off balance just a little bit. All right. I'm going to bring up this article, and you can give me the cut it off or not. The article is real estate agents are reluctant to recommend their career amid industry changes. Is that a topic you're okay to broach?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I remember when I got started in this thing back in 2005. I didn't know anything. I mean, I knew nothing. But I was always in sales. I've been doing that my whole life. Now, I don't know why, but that's just what I've always done. And then when I was presented with the opportunity to get a real estate license, second wife, she said, "Let's do it." When we moved here to Tennessee, she said, "Let's do that. Let's try that. What can we lose?" And I was like, "Okay." And to my mind, when I first looked at real estate, this is how stupid I was. And I'm not saying I'm not that stupid still, but how unaware I was back then. Because houses are big, I thought there just can't be that much business in real estate. I'd never looked at it as an industry, and I thought there can't be that many houses to sell. You can, that piece of the pie is just not going to be big enough. Well,
Right.
boy, was I wrong. Jesus Christ, wow. But so what the smartest thing that we did early on was having no experience in real estate is we hired a coach, a guy who was very expensive, very successful. And that's what we did. That's how we learned early on how to do real estate, was not just getting in there and guessing. We were paying a couple of $1,000s a month to learn from a guy that was selling several thousand homes a year on how to do that. We didn't want to get that big, but we wanted to be able to function in it. So that's how we got started. And that's why I'm convinced to this day, 20 years later, I'm still happy and healthy in the business of real estate, because that guy set me up. He set me up correctly. You know, this is how you sell houses, because there's a lot of people that do it wrong. I just guess is I don't know, that don't learn from the experts first. They think it's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So Realtor.com and was it Redfin? I think they were doing a survey. Only 21%. That's for these days. Only 21% of agents said they're likely to recommend being a real estate agent. I'm going to switch this. Likely to be a real estate agent, compared to 49, almost 50%, who said they're unlikely to recommend their career to others, according to a survey conducted by Real Estate Redfin. And you know what they're doing is they're trying to figure out how to hire more agents. That's what they're doing. That 29% differential is the worst it's been in years, and the metric has worsened since the COVID-19 panic. Man, remember that? Golly. Signs and nobody wanting to go through the houses, and masks, and geez Louise. It used to be the law that we'd have a sign that you can't come in here without a mask. Good Lord. There was a 17% percentage point differential between the share of agents likely to recommend versus those who would not. The biggest issue of the job cited by agents surveyed now is the unpredictability of income, because it's 100% income, 100% commission. If you're not selling a house, you're broke. That's basically it. So here's what dealing with, okay, jump in anytime, Rodney. I'm going to switch this back to, okay. Dealing with other agents who are rude or unprofessional ranked number 3 on the major issues list. Number 3. It clicks.
Yeah. I was surprised about that, because, inconsistent income, unpredictable, and then finding customers, actually making it in the real estate business, is difficult, right? So it's a difficult challenge, but that's also why you don't make 25,000. You can make a lot of money in real estate because it is a difficult task. But I'm surprised dealing with other agent and issues are rude and unprofessional is a number 3 reason. I mean, that was pretty wild. But, you can say 1 and 2, and you can interchange those 1 or 2. But the third one, that one caught me off guard, actually.
Well, in the unprofessional, what's packed in there that you really can't see, and this is just my take because they don't unpack this. Unprofessional doesn't necessarily mean that they're rude and hanging up and stuff. It's things like, this has been my experience. They'll write contracts like, what?
Yeah.
With stipulations that don't mean anything. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Or you're trying to call somebody and they'll get back to you 3 days later. That's the kind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just surprised that is the one of the biggest issues. I would think that the community works well together, the real estate community, because it's a small world. Like if you do a transaction with somebody today, you're probably going to do with them again sometime pretty soon. It's
absolutely. And 98% of the time, but that's how much of an effect it has. 98% of the time, for me at least, with people that I've worked with over the years, they're awesome. And I hang up going, God, I need to be more like that person. These folks they're awesome. They really are. But once in a while, you'll run into those ones that make you want to not do this anymore. That's the whole point.
Find a new job. Yeah.
I'm going to go look at McDonald's. A whopping 86% of agents rated entrepreneurial independence as being able to set their own schedule and make their own decisions as a major benefit of the job. I'm going to say hooey to that. Because if you've ever done this job and you wanted a weekend free, when do you think people want to see houses? I'm just asking. Probably on a Saturday or a Sunday. So you can say no, but I'm suggesting that that's a risk. You do get to set your own time sometimes. 76% said helping people whose lives are in transition is a major job benefit, while 72% said relationships with customers are a major benefit. I have found the relationships to be the most rewarding for me. Not every client is a match made in heaven. You know, some people are, they just want to get a house and can't wait to get out of your circle, you know. But then there's others that to this day, I just love them to death. Affordability was far and away the top concern cited by agents. This has got to be the case for you too, Rodney. I want to hear about this. When people, how often do people call the lender first before they go to agents? Is that a common thing?
Yeah, I get like, and they may have talked to an agent, but I talked to several that don't, that may have not have signed a contract or a deal with an agent yet. But I do talk to some. The majority of them come from an agent. That's how my business is, or a
Yeah.
past client. But um, yeah, you do absolutely. You do get them before they've committed to an agent.
Oh, man. Philip has really made he's made a great point, which really, really has made a good point. I never thought about this before. I think when these home renovation, home building, and realtor TV shows presented a fantasy of easy money, and that it just makes it simpler. You couldn't be more correct on that. And I'm telling you, I'm so glad you brought that up because it is hard to understand. I mean, if you saw the numbers, the numbers. Well, I'll get to that in a second. what when I hear people talk about like on Reddit, we're going to get on Reddit here in just a second. I'm actually going to skip one and go right to Rodney's report. When I hear people talk about how easy it is to be a real estate agent or a realtor and that kind of stuff, when you're talking about home buyers that have gone through the process, and we've spoken about this before, part of that is because the agent was so good or so smooth or had done it enough times as to where a home buyer never had a clue on what the bumps and the troubles that were going on behind the scenes. That's part of our job, you
Right.
know, is making sure that it's smooth and successful and they get to closing with everything that they want without having to rip their hair out. And it is easy to imagine that that was a piece of cake. Sometimes, honest to God, they really are. The
Yeah.
stars fall into place and things actually proceed as they should. But then sometimes they don't, you know, and it's everything from appraisal to just line them up.
Yeah.
Just line them up. And Philip is absolutely right. And then when we went through and I think the reason this is kind of an interesting, at least caught my attention, was over the last 4 or 5 years, it was in the realm of easier than it's been in the past. If somebody had gone through the crash like Rodney and I did back 2012 and that time, there's no imaginings that it's an easy thing. I mean, if somebody wants to sell a house, you go in there and tell them they're going to lose $40,000 when they sell. See how easy that is for you, you know? That's what we had to go through. But during this last 4 or 5 years, when you could almost put a cardboard sign in the yard and get it under contract, it just drew people in from all corners of the country thinking that it was easy. Now, just because you get a contract doesn't mean that you've gotten to closing.
Right.
Getting the contract is one thing. Closing and putting out all the fires is another. That's absolutely right, though, Philip. You're absolutely right. And the numbers, we'll get to that in a second, have really changed on how many agents there are in the country. We'll get to that in a second. The tough market for buyers has also been tough for agents. By the end of 2024, the number of full-time agents and brokers dropped to its lowest point in more than a decade. I think that's since 2013. In 2019, there were 543. I've never quite figured this out, how they split this up. In 2019, there were 543,000 full-time real estate agents and brokers in the U.S., according to data gathered by the Federal Reserve, Fed. After a slight dip in 2020, there were 524, down from 543 in 21, and in 500 down to 512 in 22, and in 23 that number dropped to 440, and then to 398,000. Now, but realtors, they say there's 1.5 million. So I guess they're distinguishing between realtors and real estate agents, apparently, is what they're doing. So the last time the number of full-time agents and brokers was that low was in 2013. So I'm just saying, if you're looking for an easy way out, this isn't it. At least not for most people. You know, you got to have, what would you say, 6 months or a year's worth of emergency fund before you start something new like this, Rodney?
I've hired new loan officers, and it's similar. You know, they're 100% commission. Um, Absolutely. If you can go a year, I tell them, you know, hey, if you can, you know, go a year. And a lot of times, you know, what we try to do is, like, if I'm hiring somebody new, I just try to give them some base salary and see, you know, something that they can make it on, because they're not going to make it otherwise.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah.
real estate is just a little bit different. You know, at a bank, you know, we got a little bit more. We may have some more options, like giving them,
Right.
paying them while they're training or something, but it's tough to get started. One of the craziest stories, that he's a really good lender in this area, has done, you know, probably 50, 60 million a year, maybe more than that, for 20 years in a row. And it took him he took him over a year to get his first deal. So,
Oh,
um,
really?
yep, glad he stuck with it. But that, you know, he's thrived ever since then. But it took him an awful long time to get started.
Well, and that's what I'm sure that's where he learned all his lessons. You know, is in that.
Yeah, I mean, you got. Well, I mean, it's just difficult to grow your business. You know, I mean, you've just got to get lucky and do a lot of things and work hard, and it'll work out for you. But it's difficult. Yeah.
It,
No, you know, nobody wants these jobs right now. And mortgage is the same way. Mortgage loan officers, they have been flooding out of the market. They've been pouring out of the market, pouring out of the market. Unbelievable. Like, we heard a stat that, you know, several 100,000 didn't renew their licenses in January. So
how many are in the country?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I'd say it's mirroring what the real estate agents are doing, because it's, you know, the same as us. We're both 100% commission, and if they're not closing anything, they're probably going on and getting a different job somewhere in a different sector.
And whatever I know that you've said, and there's some evidence to provide that it is changing since the NAR lawsuit. Commission rates have been going down, but they haven't been dropping like a rock or anything. It was like,
No.
you know, like 237 to 236. Well, wow, oh gosh, I can't hardly stand it, you know. But they seem to be going down, and the pressure is really on now with the way that the communication goes. Um, uh, um, it's just a different environment, and if you know, for the newer folks, it's tough. So, I mean, the last thing I'll say about this, and I bet it's the same thing for loan officers. I have been doing it for a long time, so I know what good times are like, and I know what bad times are like. I know what they're like. I've lived them. But when somebody says, "I've been thinking about getting into real estate, what do you think?"
Mhm.
I'm going to talk to them and try to figure out what their personality is like. You know, what's their tolerance level, because you can hang up. I know for a fact with you guys, you can hang up the phone really getting beat up. I mean, geez,
Yeah,
You
I
can.
mean it's a tough business. I mean, but it's like anything else, Andy. It's you go in, you work your butt off, you can do well, right? And that's no different than any other business.
Yep.
It's just in usually real estate and mortgage. You're your own boss, and if you can't get up every morning and go to work without having to punch in a clock or a boss telling you, you're not going to do very well. Like
Yeah.
this is people, that's what I always laugh at. People always tell me if somebody told me they wanted to have a flexible schedule, I would never hire them because they have no clue. Like if you want a flexible schedule, then you need to go get a job at Walmart or something. Like mortgage and real estate, you're there daily, every day, and you're available on the weekends. Like this is your job. Like you're not taking it to. Now, I ain't saying like, for me, if I wanted to go watch my kid play golf at, in high school match or something at 2 o'clock, I can run out there and do that because I can work from my phone. I have those abilities. But the flexibility, when people act like, oh, I want this job because it's so flexible, I'm like, you're not, you have no clue what this job is. Like, you want flexibility flexibility only comes if you're not doing nothing and broke, right? So.
That's exactly right. The you're all. When doctors talk about you see medical and they're on call, I'm on call. My day could change with a phone call in a heartbeat. So that's how I feel about that. So if you're thinking about getting into real estate, give me a call. Let's chat. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to shift gears here. We're finally
Yeah,
after. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's. I believe I like Philip's comment. You could write the Realtor Country Western song too. You just throw in a truck and a dog or a beer or something, and cry the blues a little bit, and you got your country song.
I could. Got me thinking.
You could substitute a client broke up with you instead of your girlfriend. I mean, there's all kinds of. He is on it right there.
Yeah, make it like a breakup song, and it turns out to be. All right, so here we go. We're gonna do something. We're gonna do something new, and I really like this. This intro is a little longer than usual because we got to wait for the drop. So here it comes. There you go. I love that drop on there. It's Rodney's radar, and he's got something on his radar. What is it, Rodney?
It is. I've got that. I pulled up. Do you have that report there? I can't see what.
I do.
What's on the camera, but the basically the article is about. Instead of reading it, I'll just kind of review it here. The question reads: a customer or a client is asking, should he save up for 4 years and pay cash for the home, or should they buy now and see what happens instead of doing the whole paying cash for it thing. So
right.
And I want to know, anybody watch this, let us know what you think in the comments. I know Andy loves reading these comments. So let us know what you think in the comments too, because I really want to know everybody's, but I want to kind of go through what he talked about, and then I want to put my 2 cents in this. So, but give us your 2 cents too. So the people have 100,000 in savings right now, and then they save about 70,000 annually. And this, a big part of this savings is they've included, when he said that, he included his 401k in that article. He includes his 401k and long-term saving vehicles in this money. Now, ideally, they would like to save about 400,000 per year. 400,000 in 4 years. And that's a fantastic goal. Like they're saving a lot of money. Like I see a lot of different applications, and that is for somebody saving that much money annually, they're doing very well. So he's asking, he's like, his question is, where he talks about 250,000 mortgage. He's buying a 350 and he puts his 100 down now. This is kind of where he starts at. He says his mortgage at 5.875 costs about 14,000, which is slightly less than his rent. So purchasing right now using his 100,000 would come out about slightly less or just equal to what his rent is. So that's a kind of an important factor. Um, but what he's saying, what he mentions in is some negatives about buying a house is repairs on it and then closing costs, which are definite concerns. You need to kind of factor those in. And he goes on to ask, am I missing something, or is there a better way of looking at this? And I think he's really not missing anything. I think he just started with comparing. I think that's the first thing you do is like when you look at the house is like, can I afford it? And that's the first thing he did. Compared like what that payment would be versus what he's paying now. But really, that's not a very, that's where he starts. That's where somebody starts is figuring, okay, is that a good deal or not? So here's my 2 cents with this situation right here. And do you have that? One pulled up, Andy?
The slide.
The slide, yeah. So my 2 cents is this: 100%, I think you should purchase today, and we'll go through the slide numbers and look at that. But number one is the first thing in this is the question in this to me is one: is it affordable for them? Yes, this is affordable for them. If you're saving $70,000 a year, that's probably $100,000, post tax. Or a pre-tax, you've got to make, so basically $100,000 of their income is just going towards savings. So if they're at a 50, if they save 50% of their income, they make 200,000 and saving 100 of it. So they're in a really good position to buy. That's first and foremost. The number one thing to me as well is the price today is not the same price in 4 years. Like if you're wanting to buy a 350 today, it's going to be a lot more. And from that chart, I think in 5 years, that was going to be over $50,000 alone in, equity. And that's at like a 3.5% projected appreciation rate. So, and then the other thing to consider is, in 4 years, you're just now buying, so you may end up paying 50, 75,000 more for this house in 4 years than you would today. And then the biggest part for me is the time between now and say 8 years. How much money would you have saved up if you didn't put that full 400,000 towards a house? Because in 4 years, if you spent 100,000 on your down payment, you would have ideally, in the same circumstance, you'd have saved an additional 300,000. You'd have bought today. In the next 4 years, you'd have saved up an additional 300,000. Well, that 300,000 at 5% is going to make you 15,000 a year. So your money starts working for you as well. Your money starts making some money for you, and you still have this equity in the house where, if you'd have just spent your 400,000, that would have been you're turning your cash that's earning money into dead equity. Which equity's fine, but you don't want, like, I wouldn't want all my money sitting in equity. You let your houses take care of themselves, but save as much cash as you can, in my opinion. So you'd have a ton of equity in a few years. 50, 60,000 that would cost you more if you didn't buy today. And then you still have your savings, that extra 300,000 over the 4 years. And then a big point about it is you're kind of protecting yourself from rent for the rest of your life. Because rent is 100% interest. So when people say, well, comparing it against rent, rent is the worst thing on the face of the planet, in my opinion. You got a lot of flexibility with renting. Like you may be able to leave that house, you may be able to leave, pick up and leave, which is fine. But typically that's not long-term wealth building strategies. So, you lock in your rent, and we've looked at this before. I've heard some projections around here that rent could be in 10 years, upwards to $7,000 and $9,000 a month. So, we're not, and that's nothing to, shake your hat about. And, four years down the road, if they were to hit like a 9% increase in appreciation, he could be spending $100,000 more for this house versus, so that's what I look at. And, and what I haven't discussed is interest rate, right? The interest rate today is still, it doesn't affect, it's not eating away your appreciation. That's when you start worrying about the interest rate, in my opinion, is like, okay, now I'm paying so much that, it's not affordable. But when you're in a situation where where you can earn equity like we just talked about, and you have the ability to save, you keep your cash on hand where that's going to be making you money throughout your life. To me, it's no question whether you buy now. Would he be fine if he saved up and bought cash? But one, he's starting at zero. He's got all that equity, and it's not necessarily earning him like his cash would be. 400,000 cash could be earning you 20,000 a year or a lot more. And if they say 300,000 doubles every 7 years, in 21 years, he would be at what? It goes 600, 1.2, 2.4 million. In 21 years with his 300,000 savings. So that's the way I look at that. It's not, I think they're missing something. I think when you're young and you haven't been through this process a bunch of times, you don't know what you look for. And so that's what I would tell them is just, hey, I would highly consider, and then not only would I highly consider it, I'd highly consider only putting 20% down and not his full 100. It's hard for a young couple to save money, and once they start having kids, kids are expensive. I mean, you can't do anything cheap with a child. So, they're going to be. It's going to take a lot. So
That's excellent.
That's it. That's all I got on that.
I think that's excellent. And Angie had a really good point too.
All right, what is that here? I've lost my camera here.
She said, why would he even ask that? If he buys now and keeps putting 40,000 into his house every year, he'll have it paid off in no time or refinance.
Yeah, and see, I would like, if it was my kid or I was advising them, I would say, don't try not to like save your money instead of putting an extra 40,000 into your debt equity. Let it earn some money. If you're already comfortable with your mortgage payment, your money is liable to earn more than it is the interest you're paying. So that's the biggest. And then once you put that money in there, it's
done.
It's dead. But I would like to say, hey, they've got a very good saving plan. Maybe look at paying it. Maybe look at starting it off like that with 20%, and then maybe going to a 15-year term in a few years. Getting used to the payment, and then trying to reduce your interest rate and your term in a few years. But putting a bunch of cash into it, I would rather see them save it than pay off that mortgage. Just because cash is hard to acquire.
Right. Yep. That's really good. Can you handle one more? Did you really lose your camera? Did you get it back? Do you have your camera there?
Sorry, say that again.
Did you lose your camera? Can you see the feed?
No, I can't. I don't know what I've done here. I've got stuff going on everywhere. Only thing I can see is myself in my camera.
Okay.
What article was it though? I've lost my Chrome is somewhere.
It's yeah, it was the one that you had mentioned about convince my husband that paying extra monthly, it feeds right into it. Convince my husband that paying extra monthly principal toward our mortgage is not the best idea. It was another Reddit article.
Yeah, I apologize. I've lost all my articles here. I got my only is a Warren Buffett article.
Nah, that's okay. Don't worry about it. That's good. It's good. That's all right. Hey, listen, that was great. That was a situation where what I really like, and I want to lean more of that into this show, is the article that Rodney was just talking about was Reddit. It was real people, real life, real questions, and that's the kind of stuff I want to do moving forward. Lean even more into that. So I can't thank you enough for that, Rodney. That was really good. So keep your money earning interest elsewhere. That's the point. And so we'll close it up for today. Ange, thanks for being here. Philip, thank you very much, buddy. Tell Wendy we said hi. Give a big hug. And Rodney, you have any final thoughts?
No, just great great articles. That I like that one about the real estate industry. People always ask me. I hear my loan officers I work with, my team. They're like, "Man, I wouldn't want your job for anything. I wouldn't want your job for anything." So yeah, it's I get it.
It's you got to be persistent with it. We'll get through it. Hey, we'll see you next week. Thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.